here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to start going through stuff. We're probably going to go for about an hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe all the way up to an hour and a half, because I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A. And this is like a workshop style webinar where I'm going to be leading you through. So grab a pen and paper or some way to take notes if you prefer to do it digitally. But I want you to treat this like a workshop, right? This is not, I'm not just talking at you. I want to lead you through this exercise of goal setting in this way that I have developed from a bunch of other methodologies and found what works for writers. I've done 12 cohorts with this process now, putting writers through this process and then through a program called Goal Getter School. So let's get started. It's going to be really fun. Do me a favor as well. As I'm going through the material, if there is something that is extremely helpful for you, where you're just like, wow, I haven't thought about that way before, or wow, I bet that would work for me, drop a 1 in the chat, because I always like to refine my webinars and make sure I know what is most useful for people. So drop 1 in the chat as we go through, so I know what's working for you. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sue Campbell. I'm a book marketing and mindset coach, very heavy on the mindset, or no one would do their book marketing. I've worked with award-winning authors, best-selling authors, regular old authors, fiction, nonfiction, traditionally published, independently published. I don't care. I just love working with writers, period. I also love getting shit done. And I get shit done by managing my mind. So I've published 2 books. I've got another one coming out either late this year or early next year. I run pages and platforms. I've got 2 other manuscripts in progress. I have 2 neurospicy kids. One of them I would say is more like neurohabanero. I have chronic health conditions that I manage successfully, and I am happy and not burned out, with the caveat that this last year has been one of the hardest years of my life. Thank you, perimenopause and some other factors. So I did come close to burnout this year, but I did keep myself out of the worst of it because of the tools that I've used and because of the mindset work and because I'm very lucky and privileged and have good health care, right? So all of this mind management is the only tool that's 100% within your control. It is a game changer. So I really want you to focus on looking at your thoughts throughout this call and this workshop. Because this is more of a workshop, I would invite you to turn off your phone or any other distractions that might interrupt. Grab a pen and a notebook. Analog is very helpful for your brain, particularly if you are neurospicy, but whatever works for you. I want you to make these notes for yourself and do yourself the favor of going through this process. So first, we're going to talk about the pitfalls of goal setting. Hold on a sec. I'm going to take a sip. Allergies. We're going to talk about the pitfalls of goal setting, the way our culture does it largely, because it's got a lot of pitfalls, but I'm going to go through the worst ones. And then I'm going to lead you through the 5-step goal setting process that I've developed. And as if we are in the first session of Goal Getter School. This is literally the process that I do in the first session of Goal Getter School with my students. We're going to go all the way through that process. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Goal Getter School for those of you who are interested. And then we are going to go into coaching and Q&A. So there is a Q&A box in your little Zoom toolbar. It may be hidden right now under that little More menu. If there's a question you want me to answer at the end, feel free to put it in that Q&A box at any time. Don't put questions in the chat, because the chat's going to move very quickly as we go through the workshop part. And the chance of me being able to see it and answer it is pretty small, because I have to focus on the presentation instead of the questions as we go along. So put it in the Q&A box and we will get to it. And right now, please tell me in the chat, what is your biggest goal setting or goal getting challenge? When it comes to goals, what is the hardest thing for you right now? Okay, Amy says consistency. Joy says my goal is to finish the manuscript, but what is the hardest thing about reaching that goal for you right now, Joy? Kayla, just daily consistency. Okay, Sarah says I don't know where to begin. Indigo says motivation. Janine says follow through. Okay, we've got follow through a couple of times already. Figuring out what I really want. Ooh, that's a good one. Falling behind and giving up. That's all mindset. Yes, totally. We can help you with that. Shelly, finding time in my schedule. Yep. Rachel says staying consistent. So we've got a lot of consistency threads through this. So I'll be talking about that as we go through, and we can cover that in Q&A as well. Lori says how to set goals, balancing both editing my first draft and to start my next book, how to organize, time block, manage block. Yes. Brianna says it's so hard to set a goal that's actually realistic. Joy says I have too many balls to juggle. Wendy says stuck scenes. So that's like how do I get myself? Is it a craft issue or is it a mindset issue when scenes get stuck? Lori says time management. Setting realistic daily, weekly writing time, realistic timelines, consistency. Okay. Oh, this is a good mindset one. I don't think I'll finish, so why start? Yep. And then you're going to prove yourself right? Like you let that thought run the show of, I don't think I'll finish, so why start? And you're totally going to prove that you can't finish. Caroline, daily attention. Mia says not changing the whole plot at the middle of the manuscript. And is that a problem? Sometimes that's not a problem. Okay. Okay, great. These are good. This gives me a sense of what things I can emphasize as we go through this. So let's talk about goal-getting pitfalls and drop like, let's say the number 8 in the chat when I hit one that happens to you. Okay. So oftentimes when we set goals, we're setting them from a very like grasping and clinging place. Like I need to reach this goal. I need it to feel like I am worth a damn as a person. I need to prove to myself this has to happen or I will keep having a very low opinion of myself. Right? Like this is my only path to proving that I am worthy. Right. So then we need it, right? There's this like graspy, clinging energy. And then if something happens that interferes with our plans or interferes with our consistency, then there's a total like shame crash. Right. And when we have shame fueling our emotions, we don't take very many positive actions. Right. So that's resonating for some of you. Another thing that we do very often is we don't have systems or habits to accomplish the goal. So we set the goal without accounting for the fact that we haven't yet built the systems and the habits that we're going to need to get there. Right. So some of you talked about, like, I don't know how to plan for this. I don't know how to do this project and that project at the same time. Right. So we just set the goal. And then every day we're like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? And we kind of panic because we don't have a system. And then we fall off and we don't know how to get back on because we don't have a system for getting back on. And then the goal elapses. And again, it feeds into this feeling bad about ourselves because we're not able to follow through. Okay. And then we have giving up in the face of obstacles, right? So even though we know on a logical level, life is full of obstacles, it is normal for obstacles to come up. If we set a goal, like I'm going to write my draft in the next 3 months. And then we say, oh no, my boss just gave me a big project. And then we're like, oh, well, okay, there goes the goal. There goes the project. So as soon as we hit an obstacle, we give up. So I don't know how many 8s came in for that one resonating, but that's a really, really common one, even though we know they're going to come up, right? So how do we have the mindset that obstacles are actually not a problem? We can account for them and we can have a game plan to deal with obstacles. And then a really big one that I'm committed to solving with the people I work with is we're assholes to ourselves throughout the whole process. Like I'm not working hard enough. I'm being lazy. I had a client say yesterday, I'm just farting around, right? Like we're really mean to ourselves thinking that is somehow going to motivate us, probably because we had a lot of adults who were trying to get the best out of us as we were growing up by being mean to us, right? And like being disappointed or using anger or using power over us. So we're not very kind to ourselves as we go throughout the process. And I'll talk about this too, but very briefly, when we set a goal, that becomes like a circumstance that we've set for our life. And then we have a thought about that goal. Right? we make up a story about our ability to reach that goal. And that story creates an emotion. So positive emotions will help us take positive actions. They're emotional fuel for our actions. Negative emotions are not good fuel. You might be able to get like a day's work out of yourself out of that, or a week's worth of work, but you can't sustain a good, healthy amount of positive actions from only negative fuel. So then you end up with a result that is not what you wanted, right? But yet we keep returning to this tool of treating ourselves badly to try to get good work out of ourselves. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. Okay, so those are the major pitfalls. This process is designed to avoid those major pitfalls. So we're going to talk about how to set your goals in 5 steps, which we can do on this call together. You may want to go back and massage them and spend a little more time after the call, because we're going to do this obviously quickly by its nature. Okay, so how many of you have heard of SMART goals? Drop a 2 in the chat if you've heard of SMART goals, or just put a yes or something like that. Okay. I hate SMART goals. I understand the good intention behind SMART goals. I get what they're trying to do, but they suck. They're not motivating. They're not fun. They have us thinking so small, right? They have us like sandbagging our own potential. I don't like SMART goals. And we'll get into the practical side of this. We absolutely will, right? I like that they're trying to get at the practical way to tackle something. But we need to have a wildly improbable goal to get us excited and to get our imagination going so that we feel like doing all this work is worth it, right? We're going to get something big, beautiful, and tangible out of it. And it's not just the result of the thing. It's not the tangible reward of the book. It's who we become in process, in the pursuit of a wildly improbable goal. We don't become anybody stronger in the pursuit of a SMART goal, right? We become stronger in the pursuit of a wildly improbable goal, whether we ever get to that actual thing or not. So this is, Rachel says, our organization uses SMART goals, but most all fail. Yeah, because they're lame. So I want you to set a wildly improbable goal. This is a career level goal that you can't fully accomplish in 3 months, and it's not even within your control, right? So, getting your dream agent is a wildly improbable goal because you can't control whether or not you get that agent or not, right? Having your book made into a Netflix series is a wildly improbable goal. It's not within your control. Kayla's got win a Bram Stoker Award. Great. So Lori, I would say that's fine if it feels wildly improbable to you now to be a published author, but that's not that wildly improbable. That tells me you've got a lot of limiting beliefs already. So keep it for now if it's motivating, but I want you to get to the point and realize oh, that's not that improbable for me to become a published author. People do it every day. Like a newborn baby, it happens every day, right? You're totally capable of that. So examples of wigs, you guys have already got the idea based on the chat, but to be featured on Fresh Air with Terry Gross, to become the next Margaret Atwood, to get my book made into a Netflix miniseries, all those kinds of things. So I want you to write down for yourself on your piece of paper, write down your WIG, your wildly improbable goal, and then bonus points if you share it in the chat. Shelly says book turned into a series. Janine says anime adaptation. I love it. Viviana says to be an expert on midlife women's invisibility. Beautiful. Sarah says to have my novel turned into an Oscar-winning movie. Beautiful. Imogen says Hallmark movie adaptation. Jim says, where'd Jim go? Oh, this is moving so fast now. Have my next book be a runaway national bestseller. Rachel says bestseller Christmas book that Hallmark and Netflix fight over for the rights. Yes, let's use those big writers' imaginations. Zoom user says 5 million copies sold. Wendy says 20 books in my series, counting side and solo series. Anime would be great too. Great. You guys are totally getting this, right? Wildly improbable goal. This goal will have you thinking out of the pattern of your normal thinking, right? Your normal thinking is why you are stuck and can't reach your goals and show up for webinars so you can borrow someone else's thinking. So a wildly improbable goal helps you do that too. And it's not about reaching that specific goal. It's about that is going to help me make steps that I would not otherwise take without the goal. Okay, so that's number one. Second piece of this is knowing your why. Why do you want that? Why do you want that wildly improbable goal to come true? Right? So strong whys often include a service element. So making some sort of contribution to the world, and they contain, so you can even have two whys that hit each of these, a short-term benefit for you, not just a benefit for you in the future, but like, well, when I sit down to write every day, I feel better every day, right? I feel more fulfilled every day. So know your why. Write it down for yourself. Your why has to be strong enough to overcome all of the pain and discomfort that's going to come up in the pursuit of the goal, right? If there's not a strong enough why, you're going to give up because it's not worth it. So we have to know your why. So write it down, and please, for bonus points, tell me in the chat. And the bonus points aren't actually worth anything except my saying the words, by the way. I want to be transparent about that. But it helps everybody else. Joy says, I don't understand the why. So that you set a wildly improbable goal, or even your normal goal, right? Your goal that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Why do you want to accomplish that goal? What do you think it's going to do for you? Right? So Mike's example is financial security and greater global opportunities, right? So Mike thinks if I reach that wildly improbable goal, I'm going to be more financially secure and have greater global opportunities, right? Often what I find is that people's, I'm going to read a couple more whys before I share that. Beverly says, financially solvent and respect for my writing. Yep, respect. See that feeling? She's going to respect herself more. Joy says, feel complete. Yes, and to get my satisfaction. Lori says, share my stories and connect with readers. Yep. Kayla says, I want to add to the pantheon of horror greats and be named in the same breath as Stephen King. Beautiful. Wendy, little, to be able to give stack of published books to mom for Christmas. Big, buy my town a new library. Amazing. Lori says, long-term, I want to write to help other women who struggle with worth, anxiety, and codependency. Short-term, I love writing a first draft, so I want to get there. Yes. Okay. Amy says, to do the thing and watch it flourish in the world. Molly says, to bring people joy, right, and happiness in their lives and have some money and financial security for me. Imogen says, I want fellow disabled writers to see themselves on the page, right? So there's the service element we're seeing in some of these as well. I have a theory that deep down, we want to do all this because we want to be proud of ourselves, right? They all sort of boil down to, I want to feel proud of myself. I want to feel that I made an impact. I want to feel that I, created my own financial security. I want to feel proud of myself. So that leads us to number 3. How do you want it to feel? Right? So we talked about the pitfalls of goal setting is that we're beat ourselves up throughout the process and it feels bad. Guess what? If it feels bad, eventually your brain is going to stop letting you set goals. Who has ever said to themselves, forget it, I'm just not setting goals anymore? Put a yes in the chat if you've ever at one point just given up on the whole idea of goal setting because it felt so bad when you were doing it, right? Okay, we're getting some yeses there. So what we do is say, okay, I'm going to feel bad all along the way to trying to reach this goal, because if I reach the goal, then I will magically feel good. right? Somehow, if I am mean to myself and I have a really bad time, but I'm so mean to myself that I accomplish the goal, then the goal, achieving that will actually, I'll suddenly feel good. And then Judy says, laughing out loud, right? So we can be intentional about what we think it's going to feel like when we reach that goal. So what do you think you'll feel like when you accomplish your goal, your wildly improbable goal or your mini goal, doesn't matter. Well, how do you think that's going to feel? Yeah, Imogene says relief. Kayla says so proud and joyful. Joy and relief. Joy says excited, proud, like it was meant to be. Joelle says aliveness and validation. Satisfying. I did that. Lori said release of pressure. Portia says exhausted, right? So again, I'm never the coach who's going to tell you you exhaust yourself in pursuit of a goal. I want you to find a sustainable way to reach the goal, right? Where it does not mean, so think about your attitudes that think, oh, if I reach the goal, it means I'm going to be exhausted. We've got some thought errors in there. Janine says relief. Rachel says excited. Okay. Oh, we've got more. Amazed and happy. Feel like I can write more. Surprised that I can do anything I set my mind to. Yes. Okay. So the key is we've got to feel that feeling as much as possible throughout the entire goal getting process. So naming ahead of time, this is the feeling I want. I don't have to wait till I reach my goal to get it. In fact, I'm more likely to reach my goal if I can find a way to feel that every day or as much as possible. So let's try to do that. I want to give you a taste of this. This is called the goal sandwich. I named it, but I got most of the technique from another coach who trained me in life coach school. So we're going to make a list of things that you want for your career, right? And this is helpful for goal setting because your goal is probably in here somewhere. So just make a list of at least 3 things that you want for your career that you haven't gotten yet, right? I want to spoil. Tell me in the chat, and you can make it on your piece of paper too, but tell me in the chat. Yeah, Judy says this might be where fake it till you make it might actually apply. Yeah, and it's not faking it. Your brain doesn't know the difference, right? So like I can generate a positive emotion by telling myself a good story, or I can generate a negative emotion by telling myself a negative story, but somehow in our culture, we think the negative one is the realistic, true one. That's kind of sick, right? Like as a culture. So how do we say, actually, this other positive thing is just as possible? Let's tell ourselves a story about the good possibility instead of only the bad possibility. Okay. So Viviana says financial stability. And Viviana, I would say quantify that. What does financial stability look like for you? Because nothing will move the goalpost, right? Like finances. We'll see like, oh, I want financial stability, right? But you could ask some millionaires if they have financial stability and they would say no, right? So quantify what you mean. What's your definition of financial stability? Let's see. Carolyn says, people know I have respect for my work. Wendy says, a living wage bestseller status. Kayla says, finish a manuscript, get an agent, award nominee for my debut novel. Very concrete. Good. Things that you want for your career that you don't already have. Okay, Viviana says it means moving to a safe place. Okay, great. And even pick like three possible places that could mean moving to. Sarah says an agent, a publishing contract, people who love my book. Yep. Lisa says feel like it's a mission. Lori says finish revising my first novel, a viable presence on the website, Goodreads, Amazon, and Fable, get an agent. Okay, great. So these are things that you don't yet have, right? And when we focus on the things that we do not have, name the emotion when you wrote those down and you know you don't have them yet. What does that feel like? Can you name an emotion, not a thought? And yeah, there's a pit in my stomach. There's shame. There's anxiety. So we're focusing on what we don't have, and that's kind of what we get, right? Because we feel like the gap between where we are and what we want. There's despair, right? So here's where we got to shift it. Like, Lori's already at excitement. Great. How do we get more people there? Now, I want you to make a list of things that you want for your career that you already have. You still want them. You would get them again if you could, right? Like, you would still want them if you didn't have them, but you already have them. Even if that's just like, I've got 20,000 words of my draft. That's amazing. Something tangible that you already have. Tell me in the chat, what do you already have? And I want you to list at least 2 things, preferably 3 or 4. So Terry says, first book published 3 books a year, publish 1 anthology year. Okay, I think that's what you want. So that's just a little from the last one. So now everybody tell me, what are the things that you already have that you would want again? Yes, Kayla says an outline and a daily writing habit. Beautiful. Rin says time. Shelly says, I have time and ideas. Wendy says, a 10 title list and 2 manuscripts at 7%. Fabulous. Vivian says, my academic work being recognized in the media again. Fabulous. Lori says, a messy first draft, a writing group, Canva Pro, software to help me. Awesome. Mike says, I have spare time, 1 self-pub, 2nd meeting, editing, a new one in progress. Okay, we're not doing the stop procrastinating part yet, Mike. Hang on. Just focus on the accomplishment of what you have for right now. So then tell me, how do you feel when you look at the list of stuff that you already have? What's the emotion when you look at your assets, what you already have? Lori says proud. Sarah says a manuscript, more novel ideas, and determination to write them. Great. What's the feeling state? Joy says feel okay, but not completely satisfied. Okay, that's fine. Rin says surprise. Yeah, often it's like, oh, right, I forgot. Wendy says, so what? Okay, Wendy, very, very important. That is an inner saboteur question. And I know because it is subtly implying, it's the form of a question, but it's subtly implying that you're not enough, right? So it's what an asshole would say to you. And you would be upset about it if somebody said that to you. Like, why is that person being such an asshole? What a jerk, right? And we do that to ourselves in our heads, right? We're getting mixed reactions here. So this is very important for you to realize that you're having trouble focusing and feeling grateful for the things that you already have. So you're really in that clinging, like, I don't have enough. I need more, which I'm not saying we shouldn't want things and have desires. That's what this whole class is about. But I'm saying your emotional fuel is insufficient when all we've got is disappointment. Because what do you do when you feel disappointed? Carolyn is surprised. Mandy's encouraged and hopeful, right? Some pride, right? Excitement, still shame because I can't seem to work on the book. I feel like I have time, but there doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day. Yep. All right. So this is really important when we see that there's still a lot of negativity here. Now you know. Now I have diagnosed for you that the reason you're not where you want to be is because of your emotional fuel. You can't appreciate what you are doing. And when you can't appreciate what you are doing, your brain's like, well, why the hell should I do it? You never appreciate what I do anyway. You don't give me the credit for it. So why should I keep doing this? It just distresses us and it's hard. Do you see that? Right? So when we're like, imagine a kid who's bringing home a report card, right? That's a huge improvement from last time, but it's got some B's on it. And they have a parent who's like super harshing on them and focusing on what they don't have, the A that they don't have. Did that ever fucking help you on an emotional level to want to achieve more and to do the fuel to do it? Maybe you did it because you were scared, but you can't sustain that over a lifetime. Yes, Shelly says, wow, yes, I'm quite harsh on myself. What an epiphany. And a lot of times, if it's habitual for us, we can't even see it because that's just the way our brain operates. And we don't even recognize that it is actually really harsh. Yeah. Okay. So here we're going to take, and just for a moment, just use your writer's imagination. If you can't access this right now, pretend you're really proud of the things that you already have. All right. So we're going to use our big writer's brains. And a lot of you already have those positive emotions that when you looked at the list of stuff that I have accomplished, oh, wow, yeah, great. Yay, me. Take an unaccomplished goal and you're going to sandwich it between two goals that you have attained, right? So we're going to state that unaccomplished goal as if it's already been done. We're not lying. We're not putting that on our website. This is just a thought exercise just for you, but you're going to state it as if it's already done. So for example, the bread, right? The bread of the sandwich. I have 2 published books that's already done. That hasn't happened yet, but I'm going to state it as if it has. I'm a speaker at South by Southwest. And then the other piece of bread is I have another manuscript nearing completion. That's something that I already have done. So my goal sandwich is the 2 things that I actually have done. And then I sandwich the one that hasn't been accomplished yet. But I'm sandwiching it in this like emotional envelope where I already have positive emotions around it. Right. So then your brain sees that dissonance of like, oh, actually, I'm not a speaker at South by Southwest, but like, how do I get there? I could achieve that. I achieved those other things. Right. So rate the goal sandwich on a scale of 1 to 10 for its helpfulness to you in shifting you to a more positive emotional state for yourself. You won't hurt my feelings. So 1 didn't help at all. 10, yes, that made a difference. Like I can see the shift. I realized something important. Lori's 3. Jim is 7. Okay, great. We got 2s, we got 8s, we got 7s. Judy says it helps me remember what I really can do. Yeah. And if you're rating it low, I want you to just use that as information about where your mindset might be and how hard you're being on yourself. And do you want to continue to do that? The answer might be yes. You get to decide. Do you want to continue to do that? Or are you willing to experiment to try to shift it to some more positive emotional fuel? And you can always go back to doing it this way, right? But are you willing to experiment? Okay. Step 4. So we've already been through your wildly improbable goal, your why, your strong why, and then identifying how we want it to feel. And then we're going to try to feel that all along the way as much as we can. And it's going to be a learning curve. We want to feel those positive feelings all the way through the process. We don't just save them to the end because that doesn't work. All right. Step 4. We're going to set incredibly specific do goals. So these are the things that are within your control. Here's where we get a little bit into SMART goal territory, but they're in the service of something bigger. And we know why we want to do it. So we can overcome discomfort because we have a strong enough why. And we know what we're trying to get out of it emotionally. Right. And that we can work on feeling that emotion as much as possible. Now, right? Because we don't take action when we are not motivated by emotion. So that's where a lot of traditional goal setting is going wrong. The SMART goals don't have any emotional charge to them. They're boring, in fact. But now that we have emotional fuel about our goal, now we can be like, okay, now I'm motivated to actually take action. So what is in my control? What can I move the needle on? So this is where I want you to pick a 3-month goal, something that is within your control, that if you did it, it would get you closer to a wildly improbable goal. Not for sure it would happen, but it would get you closer to your wildly improbable goal. So tell me what your 3-month goal is in the chat and write it down for yourself, of course. Sarah says, start querying agents. Okay, so Sarah, I'm going to use you as a great example of like 3-month goal. So for the next 3 months, you want to start querying agents. So that could look like waiting until the tail end of the 3rd month, and then you start writing one query. So I want you to be a little more detailed in quantifying how many agents do you want to have queried by the end of 3 months, right? Because that's like there's way too much wiggle room in that particular goal. So thank you, because that's a really good example. Joy says, get up in the morning and wake up early to set aside a time to write. Okay. So Joy, I want you to think of, I love that because that's a habit-based goal. So that's really, really beautiful. What time? What does early constitute? Make it as specific as you can. And then in your case, this is more like in the implementation piece, but what does that mean for the night before, right? Getting up early starts the night before, or maybe even the day before with your caffeine intake the day before. So getting up early, what do I need to do to make that happen that impacts the previous night? Kayla says, flesh out outline, find my old notes, and then start writing the manuscript. Okay, so same note, Kayla, you've got, those are concrete, the outline and the find my old notes, but then the start writing the manuscript, like how far do you want to get? And it can be a guess. We're not going to beat ourselves up if we don't hit the exact benchmark on the exact day. And we can talk about that too. But like, what does start writing the manuscript mean in terms of maybe word count or scene count or act count, however you want to define it. Mike says, complete the first draft of my new novel. Great. And then Mike, you know how many words you have so far. So you can figure out like roughly how many words, or do I just care about beginning, middle, and end, right? You define what that completed first draft looks like for yourself. Rin says, complete the first draft, revise and critique. Beautiful. And again, you know, Rin, the details of how that's looking right now and who you want to critique, etc. Viviana says, to write my proposal for my book. Good. A book proposal is a pretty concrete thing, right? Because it's got certain conventions. So that's totally doable in a 3-month period. Shelly says, begin a consistent daily writing habit. Maybe start with 20 minutes. Yes. And if your brain throws up friction about 20 minutes, you start with 1 sentence. It sounds ridiculous, but it works so, so well. Denisha says, entering into the editing phase of my book. Again, entering into in a 3-month period is not concrete enough. So what does that mean? What would, like at the end of 3 months, if you look back and go, yeah, I did that. What specifically would you have done on the editing of your book? Maybe it's the first half, right? I don't know, but we need to do more than entering into because it's too squishy. Imogene says, finish my current draft, 10K a month. Okay, 10K a month for word count, and for most people is totally reasonable if we don't have mindset stuff going on. Indigo says, finish the first half of my manuscript, about 40 to 45,000 words. Good. I will set aside 1 hour per day or write 7 hours per week. Okay. Sarah says, finish compiling my list of 100 agents and sending out batches of 10 queries each week. Beautiful. Lisa says, may sound daft, but create a space that I feel I can write in. You probably don't need 3 months to do that, Lisa. Right? Like maybe you do because of circumstances, so you would know better than I do. But often inner saboteurs will get very obsessed with creating a perfect writing space instead of actually starting the writing. So how quickly can you do that and move on to the next phase? Beverly says, send my queries to at least 30 agents in 3 months. Nice and concrete. Okay. I wanted to do enough of those to give you an example of like how to really make sure that goal is concrete enough. And now we take that big goal and we're going to break it into smaller do goals, right? So you've got a 3-month level goal, but that takes, like Janine's got set up my Kickstarter and marketing plan. So there are a lot of little actions that need to take place in there. So in Goal Getter School, I help you create that entire project plan for the 3 months. So for example, if your goal is to finish a 0 draft or a first draft, all the little goals to get there might be identify the research needed, find a form of accountability, put the writing time on your calendar, set and meet your daily word count, right? Find your old notes, all those kinds of things. So you get the idea. Those are all the little goals to get there. So what I want you to do now is just for this next week, right? For the next week, I want you to pick the do goals that need to happen to get you closer toward that 3-month goal. So the very next things, and you can share them in the chat. And one of those things might be create an even more detailed project plan, right? Over the next week, you can create a more detailed project plan. Put time on a calendar with an alarm. Great. Kayla says work on the outline so that the middle and the end are more fleshed out. Great. Beverly says assemble a list of agents in my genre. Write from 4:30 to 5 a.m. Make a clearer plan on my Scrivener. Finish my list of questions for beta readers. Okay, great. You guys are getting the idea. Okay. Finish audiobooks and translations. That sounds, I don't know where those projects are at. My guess is they're near the finish line, Zoom user, but really get concrete about what are the actual steps. A lot of times if we put something on our to-do list and it is like finish audiobooks, right? And again, you may know exactly what that is, but a lot of us will be like, our brain will kind of lock up. Like I need the next thing that I can grab onto. Right? So is it a matter of uploading the files? Is it a matter of writing the description? Give yourself the little teeny tiny subtasks so that your brain knows the very next thing to do. It's got this trail of breadcrumbs that it can follow. A lot of times if you keep pushing something out and out and out on your to-do list, it's because you haven't broken it down enough. Right? So if I find myself pushing something like 2 weeks in a row, I'm like, okay, stop. I need to go and break that into smaller chunks. Okay, beautiful. Finish a short story book, spend time, something days at desk. Okay, perfect. Now, step 5. We're at step 5. So we've got wildly improbable goals. We've got identifying your why. We've got identifying how you want it to feel, all before even setting your goal, right? Then we identify the 3-month goal. Then we identify the do goals, and now we're creating the implementation plan. So this is the habit part of the pitfall. So if we have to set a goal, we have to have a system where we can get that goal accomplished. We have to put those habits in place. So this is called implementation intentions. And for those of you who absolutely hate this idea, hang with me because I'm going to give you an alternative. For most neurotypical people, saying I will do such and such behavior at such and such a time in such and such a location makes it 2 to 3 times more likely that you will actually do it, right? There's research on this. It's Peter Gollwitzer, right? It was popularized in Atomic Habits, but the researcher who originally did this was like, I think his name's Peter Gollwitzer. So just filling out an implementation intention makes it 2 to 3 times more likely that you will do it. Drop a 3 in the chat if you absolutely hate this idea and you just feel like it is telling you what to do and it feels too structured and it makes you want to throw something at a wall. Okay. Okay, good. So you, my friends, are on sort of the more rebel side of the spectrum, which means you don't want people telling you what to do. You don't even want you telling you what to do, right? So Gretchen Rubin calls these people rebels. And the mantra for rebels is you can't tell me what to do and neither can I, right? So this probably won't work with you. If you decide you want to try it and you're excited about it, then give it a try. But if you want an alternative for my neurospicy people, you can, instead of doing like, I will do this at such a time, you create a menu of options of how you might get this done. Approaches you might take to get a task done in a day, right? So this is all the list of stuff. Here's a task. I could do it right away when I wake up, or I could do it at lunch on work, or I could go to a coffee shop, or I could get on, hop on a co-writing call, right? Give yourself a menu of concrete options And then on the day, you have the freedom to decide which of those feels the best that day. It's still giving your brain an easy way in and a path where it can see the way to get it accomplished, but it's not the restriction of you have to do it this way. Right. And for those rebels, like there's a subcategory of rebels who are extra rebels, and that's called PDA. Right. Like I prefer persistent drive for autonomy is one way to name it. The actual like medical way is pathological demand avoidance. And I have 3 people in my household who fit this category. I'm not one of them. Right. But it does not work for your nervous system to have something demanded of you, even if you're demanding of yourself. So one way that you can experiment with that is creating a menu of options that you can choose. Denise says that seems to allow yourself a way out. So Denise said that probably tells me you are not in this category of people, right? So you can do implementation intention, go for it. The reason that I don't think for this category of people that it doesn't, like, I don't think it's a way of letting yourself off the hook is because we're not saying, oh, just don't do it. We're saying it's going to be easier for you. There's so much friction to a demand for people in this category that it's actually less likely to happen if they set an implementation intention, right? Drop a 1 if you agree with me, those of you who are rebels. Whereas if we have a menu of possible ways, then it breaks down some of the mental friction to how this might get accomplished, but allows autonomy on the day in the moment to choose a path that has the least amount of friction. So drop a 5 in the chat for me if this seems helpful for you. If you self-identify as a rebel and this seems like a helpful thing you could try. Okay, good. I'm starting to experiment with giving PDA and rebel writers specific, right, options. So good. That's helpful for me as well. So either create your menu or you can write in the chat your implementation intention, whatever works for you. Terry, PDA, there's a couple different ways people in the community define it. The label is technically called pathological demand avoidance, but that's kind of a horrible term for most people. So most people prefer something like persistent drive for autonomy, right? So for people who really do have PDA, anything that feels as a demand or a violation of autonomy registered as like a fight or flight threat, right? So it can make it really, really hard to get done even stuff that you want to do. Oh, good. Mandy says my rebel feels seen and excited to play. Yay. I'm so delighted. PDA people are so amazing. Like I am I'm a neurospicy groupie. I love neurospicy people. And one of my goals is to remove so much of the like shame and shit that culture does to people who are neurologically spicy, because it's cheating everyone of a lot of good stuff. Mike says, on reflection, I like the idea of a menu of the first intention, but for different lengths of time on different days. Yeah, same intention, different time constraints. Yeah, that would work too, for sure. Okay, I might choose the first plan each day, but having another option feels freeing. It's another good way to work with obstacles, actually, even if you're neurotypical, but you have the type of life where you maybe have caregiving duties that are not as predictable. So you can have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And we do this in Goal Getter School all the time, right? So plan A is this, but if something meets the threshold of an obstacle, then we can move to plan B or plan C. All right, so here are the 5 steps again. Set a wildly improbable goal, know your why, know how you want it to feel, and try to feel that all the way along. Set do goals that will move you toward your WIG, and then you're going to create your implementation menu or your implementation plan. And you're going to plan for obstacles. We know they're coming. Let's plan for them. That's a huge thing we do in Goal Getter Schools. I'm like, tell me all the internal and external stuff that has blocked you, and we're going to make a plan for it. We're going to make a plan to deal with it. Okay, so let's talk about Goal Getter School for a minute, and then we'll go to Q&A. do you want to finish a draft in the next 3 months, or grow your email list, or launch your book and you need to do all your marketing tasks that are associated with launching your book, right? I don't like trying to run a one size fits all program for one specific goal. I love customizing coaching and giving people the flexibility to work on wherever they happen to be right now. Right. So I could for sure run a program where I'm like, this is just for everybody with first drafts, or this is just for everybody in the home stretch. I want you to be able to have the help that you need right now. So if by the end of November, you want to have this 3-month goal done, I developed a coaching program. This will be the 12th cohort. It's insanely successful at helping people reach their goals. I can literally think of 2 clients where they got close, but not close enough, where it was like, and this is out of, I don't know, like probably 70 or 80 people who've been through the program. So Ruth is on here. She's on my team, and we should figure out like what the actual numbers are. But the way that I've experienced this in my own life is writing is a part of building a better life for yourself. And it's also a part of building a better world, right? Because creative people, when we've got that energy in us and we repress it because there's just all these list of adulting things that we need to do, we start causing trouble for ourselves and in our relationships, and we don't feel good, right? So Goal Getter School is heavily mindset focused while also being extremely practical, right? So I'm a total productivity nerd, but it's not productivity in the face of like running yourself into the ground to prove your worthiness. It's like, I want to be able to create the kind of life I want and take care of myself and get the rest I need and, be in my relationships and all of those things. So mindset is a huge tool that I have used because I used to be a total procrastinating fuck up. And I have come like an unrecognizably different person in the way I relate to that productivity. And I say that with a lot of compassion for the way that I used to be in my early 20s. So the next session of Goal Getter School starts September 2nd. Ruth will drop a link in the chat where you can get all of the details. I'm going to run through this really quickly, but I want you to know you can also get a free discovery call with me to figure out if this is the right program for you. So that option is on the table. Or we're also going to have an open house. So we'll send you dates on when the open house. So if you don't want a one-to-one because that feels weird, you can come to the open house and learn about it even more too. So students have finished drafts of manuscripts that have literally been molding for years. Like I've had this story for 10 years. I've barely made any progress on it. And boom, in 3 months, I have a first draft. They've created and executed entire book launch plans. Somebody created like an audiobook entirely and launched the audiobook. Pitched and landed podcasts, right? Somebody did a whole podcast tour for themselves. Someone who was terrified of doing podcasts and didn't even listen to podcasts decided that's what she wanted to do. And she was like, oh my God, this is great, right? Like I thought it was going to be so scary. And I felt like I had conversations with all these wonderful people. Audiobooks, I mentioned that one and more, right? Mostly they're focused on, let me finish this draft. Let me get this to the next stage. Let me get this book launched. Those are usually what we see, but there's always like nuance and room for your project. We've had people start like Substacks, right? I want to do that. If you want some detailed case studies, you can go to the Write Anyway podcast, and we're going to be releasing some archive episodes from people who've taken the program where they're sharing their wins and their takeaways. It's a 3-month goal-focused group coaching program that also has private coaching. It goes September through November. We rotate. So the first week is a weekly group call, and then that rotates with a weekly private session. So I am a learning nerd. I've been in group programs. I've been privately coached. And I'm like, why is nobody putting these together? Right? Not enough programs are letting you have both because they both have pros and cons. So in a group program, sometimes you feel like you get lost. So if you add private coaching, that takes care of that because you got to show up one-to-one with me every 2 weeks. And sometimes in a private session, you don't borrow the energy of the group. You don't have that available. So this really is the best of both worlds because we have both a group cohort And then we have the private weekly session. So the first weekly session is an hour. So we're going to the first private session is an hour long so that we can craft a specific project plan for you. I also, before I started doing this, like over 10 years ago, was a project manager, like a business systems analyst for a city government. So I know what I'm doing when it comes to project management, but I'm also not a corporate ick who's going to make you do it the same way. We're going to figure out a way that works for you. Your other private sessions will just be 20 minutes. And then the group calls are an hour long. And I'm teaching something. And then we're also doing a check-in every single call. You also have private community access. Honestly, I want most people to be heads down just working their project plan. So this is usually not a super busy private community, but it is there for those who want to use it. And then you forever after, while I'm doing them, which I don't have any plan to quit, I'm doing quarterly alumni calls after the program. So once a quarter, if you feel like you've fallen off the rails or you want to celebrate a win, all Goal Getter School alumni are invited to a private call and everybody gets a turn on the call. So what do we cover in here? Goal setting, both long-term and short-term, project planning, right? So again, we're going to develop a custom project plan for you, taking into account your brain, your mindset things, your life situation, right? Your other responsibilities. We're going to talk about systems and habits. We're going to run some experiments, right? The first 2 weeks when I create that project plan, I'm like, the first 2 weeks in our experiment to see if we have the right project plan, right? We can always shift it to make it work better for you. We're going to anticipate obstacles and plan for them so they do not derail you. You're going to learn to embrace discomfort, right? It's a part of the process. People give up on books and big projects and big goals because they can't tolerate the discomfort. That's the number one reason. And then we'll talk about how to hold yourself accountable so that you don't need me every single time. I want to give you the skills to hold yourself accountable going forward. I had to learn the hard way and I can make it quicker and easier for you. And my biggest drum that I beat, and this is the title of my upcoming book, is the story that you tell yourself, right? We are storytellers, but we don't intentionally apply that storytelling to our own lives enough to help us reach our goals. So that's the biggest thing I am always working on, whether you realize it or not. Homework. So it's called Goal Getter School, right? But there's not a bunch of curriculum that you need to absorb. Your homework is going to be your personal project plan. And then if you need tools and resources on mindset or anything else as we go along, I will spoon feed them to you so that you can stay locked in on what you need to be able to move forward. So by the end of the 3 months, just like this, probably 70 or 80 other people, you'll have worked through your customized project plan to fulfill your big goal, and you will have fundamentally changed the way that your brain handles challenges and what you believe is possible for you, right? Which is the hugest part. If you feel like you cannot trust yourself to follow through, that is going to shift. You're going to learn to treat yourself better and get the best out of yourself and still feel worthy for who you are. So because this is private and group both, this is not some, $49 membership. So private coaching and group calls and that custom project plan, it's $2,400 if it's paid in full. There are absolutely payment plans available. Ruth has the link in the chat. If you sign up today, if you're like, yep, I know for sure that's what I want, you can have an additional 1 hour private session where if you just bought that a la carte off the website, that's a considerable chunk in the hundreds of dollars. You get a free additional 1 hour private session that you can use whenever you want. So a lot of people will use it after the program and they'll be like, hey, I need a call, right? Like, I met my goal and now I ran into an obstacle or I need some mindset coaching. Can I have my private call now? Alumni, again, we've had so many people through the program who have, like Claire is saying, I've been struggling to find the motivation and organization needed to revise a messy draft 1 for almost a year. And with Sue's guidance and support, I managed to complete the full draft number 2 of my first novel in just 3 months. This was a total game changer. With Goal Getter School, I was able to give myself permission to honor my why and what drives me to write. I was able to sit down and push everything else aside and focus on what's driving me in my writing. I'm not going to go through all of these because I want to get to questions very, very much. So remember, there is a Q&A box. After this call, when we send out the replay, Ruth will give the link to have the discovery call. So you can hop on my calendar, or you can come to the open house, which I believe is going to be on August 28th. It's going to be like a Friday before school starts. All right, I'm going to go over to Q&A. And if you have questions you want answered today, you can put them in the Q&A box too. Beverly says, manuscript done, beta read twice, fear of sending query to agents. Yeah, so Beverly, this isn't quite a question, but I think I know what you're getting at. What do I do now, right? I'm done, I've been beta read, and I can't get myself to send queries out because I'm scared. A lot of people try to think there's some magic thing that they can do to make the fear go away, which will enable them to send the query to the agents, right? We're waiting for the fear to go away before we can do the thing. Fear is actually a sign that this is really important to you, right? That this is like good juice for your personal development. So you can send a query while still being afraid. And there are a lot of things you can do to coach yourself through the fear. And I coach people on a lot of this in our Happily Ever Author Club and stuff too. It's like, what is the thing that you are most afraid is going to happen when you send the query to agents, right? And be like, okay, could I survive that if that happened? Yup. Right? You can coach yourself. And again, this is harder for some people than others. Some people have RSD, which is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So for people who are in that situation, they're probably going to need some extra support to get through the very real potential for rejection. And the thing about rejection is this, and this is for everybody, neurodivergent, RSD or not. The only way to get to a yes, if you want an agent, is to also get no's. So the faster you collect no's, the more progress you are making to getting an agent. So you have to change the definition or the story that you tell yourself about what a rejection means. So a lot of people will go to, oh, an agent rejected my work. That means my book is bad. I'm a bad writer. I should never have done this. I've wasted all my time. That's the story that we tell ourselves around, right? Or maybe we could tell a story that I have no idea why that agent rejected me. It's such a subjective business. The fact that I got a rejection means I'm doing my part. I'm in the game. Yay me, I'm nailing it up to my wall. That is a victory number one. I'm going to accumulate no's as fast as I can because that's how I get to a yes. So that's just a real quick dive on that. Anonymous says, this is my first time attending a Pages and Platforms webinar. Will this be recorded to watch afterwards? I missed the first few minutes. Yes, we'll send out a replay afterwards. We always send out replays. Shelly says, if you know your whys, can you give an example of a service element? Oh, in the know your whys, can you give an example of a service element? So somebody said, like, I want people with disabilities to be able to see themselves in my books. So that's a service element. For me, the thing that finally got me off my can and actually writing, right? I knew I wanted to be a writer since I was 7 years old, but I didn't actually do any meaningful progress on it till I was 30 and I had my first kid. And for me, the service element for a while was I want to show my kids that it is possible to live your dream and follow through on what you said you were going to do. I want to be an example of what is possible to them. So that's a service element. In my first novel for kids as well, I have nephews whose dad is from India, and I didn't see a lot of books with Indian American kids in it. And so I wanted to give, it's not about that, but I wanted those characters represented, right? So that there were more kids who could see themselves in stories. So service element can be, how is my story making a wider impact in the world or even in my close personal circle, right? Why is it important for me to have that kind of impact in the world? Amy says, do you have any mindset continuing education resources you recommend? Yeah, I've got a whole list of books. If you go to bookshop.org, we have a little storefront there, the Pages and Platforms storefront, and there's a bunch of mindset books that I recommend. Also, our Happily Ever Author Club, we have dedicated mindset calls. I do coaching at the end of every live call that I do. We have a bunch of on-demand resources for mindset as well. So definitely recommend our Happily Ever Author Club. And then there's a bunch of mindset books, and my book will be coming out. So when that comes out later, you can use that one too, because that one's specifically for writers. A really good one right off the top of my head, Amy, that I love and changed my life is Steering by Starlight by Martha Beck. So that's a great starting place. Anana says, I have a fear of sending my book to professional editors to self-publish because most of my early readers, mainly writers, hated my story, mainly for arbitrary reasons, and make me think I need to rewrite to make them like it better first. Okay, so with the limited information that I have on this question, my first question that you need to ask yourself is, your early readers, even though they're writers, are they my ideal reader? Are they in the same genre? The problem with some writers when they give advice to other writers is they think, no, I would have written it this way, so therefore you should write it this way. And that's not the case, right? How do you want your story to land with the person who you would love if they read it, right? So I would rather see you, first of all, a professional editor's job is to help you, period. Like, you don't need to be worried about a professional editor. Like, you don't have to send a clean, beautiful draft to a professional editor. You don't need the editor, right? So what I would do is get clear on, what do you want this book to be? What impact do you want it to have on a certain type of person? What are the masterworks, right, that you have in mind with this? And then go to that professional editor and say, this is the lens that I want you to look through. This is what I'm trying to do. Can you help me do that or not? Right? Whereas your writer friends, it sounds like they just wanted you to write the way they would write it. And maybe that's good advice and maybe it isn't, but it sounds like it's out of alignment for you. And remember, I'm reading questions out of the Q&A box. So if you have a question you want me to answer, put it in the Q&A box. Zumi just says, does a self-published author benefit from an agent? Usually only insofar, because if you're self-published, most people who self-publish do not get an agent just for that main story or set of books that they're publishing, because an agent's job is to take, 15% of the deal that they get for you, and there's no deal there. But you may need an agent if you decide to sell other rights to other languages, or if you're potentially getting a movie deal, right? Translation deals and movie deals and Netflix deals and all of that, you definitely want an agent. So you don't have to have an agent right when you self-publish, but if opportunities come up like that, or you're interested in those, you may want to get an agent at that point. Brianna says, I get easily derailed by obstacles. Could you briefly speak to some strategies for dealing with some hurdles when they come up? Yeah, so make a list of the kinds of obstacles that have derailed you in the past and why you think that happened, right? And you can learn from it. And often it's because we're telling ourselves a story about that obstacle as to why it has to derail everything. So a couple things you can do. Number one, decide ahead of time the threshold of how severe an obstacle has to be before it derails your writing plan for that day, right? So a lot of times we're, especially women, are really conditioned to let other people's priorities take precedence no matter what. And that does not have to be the case. I would encourage you to not make it the case. So you decide, what is the threshold, right? That where I'm actually going to let it derail my plan for the day. And then do I have a backup plan? So what is my backup plan? So I'll just take an example. Like if I was going to write today while my kids were at school and one of my kids is home sick, then okay, I'm not going to go with my plan A, but then I have a plan B where when that kid falls asleep, or if I can set that kid up with a movie, then I'm going to write during that time. Right. So having a backup plan for the obstacles that you know are most likely to arise, or not letting all obstacles ruin your plan, are two easy ones. One last question. Oh, I don't know if I can answer this because I think it's a little out of context now. Terry says, process that changes the way the brain, what? Oh, I think it's from my slides, handles obstacles, right? And handles the way that you handle goals and the way that you think about yourself and the way that you treat yourself, right? Like you have a habit of handling things a certain way that your brain has developed. And if you want to get different results than you've had before, we have to take a different approach. So how does your brain handle challenges now? And what would you rather that be like? And then let's find some strategies to get you there. Okay, one more just came in. Follow up. Most of the readers this is anonymous following up on the beta readers or the other writers. Most of the readers were wanting a story that had mass mainstream appeal and trendy with some that were pushy for certain stories. I wanted to write a more anime-esque story with marginalized characters. Yeah, fuck them. That's not what you're doing, right? When you're looking for a writing group, everybody should be on board with, we're going to help each other write the kind of story that each writer wants to write. We're not going to push our agenda on the other writers in the group. And honestly, mass and mainstream changes so quickly. You may be trying to write to market, but you might miss it. Why not write the thing that you want to write, that's in your heart to write? And then you find the niche of people who it matches. I think an anime-esque story with marginalized characters is amazing. And you know exactly who you're looking for. That's going to be so easy to market. So yeah, forget them. Just send it to that editor. Viviana says, can you give me the link to the bookstore? Okay, hang on. Let me see if I can get it really, really quick. I am so happy everybody came. I really appreciate your attendance. It makes me excited for you and your goals. I really, really, really hope that this was helpful for you. And I would love to see you in the open house or on a discovery call. And I'm still digging for that link. I'll try to get you right to the page that you want, if I am quick enough. So everybody else, you can sign off if you want. And I'm just going to drop a link for our little mindset book recommendation. I have a hard time finding links when I'm also on calls. Hang on. All right, I'm just going to drop bookshop.org in there. And then I'm going to do it in the type answer section. And then if you look for pages and platforms on there, you might be able to find it. I was trying to go in through the back end and wasn't finding it quickly enough. If you can't find it, just email me and I'll find it for you when I have more time. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.